Hey there, and welcome back to another Explainer. Okay, so today we're jumping right into a really fascinating, completely unscripted Oval Office interaction. We're talking about a press gaggle, where Donald Trump literally bounced from NASA astronauts straight to global wars and then right into personal grievances. It is a wild ride and a really unique look at how totally unrelated topics collide when the script gets completely thrown out the window.
To help make sense of this massive, sprawling transcript, we've organized everything into four key thematic buckets. 1. Space and the unknown. 2. Foreign policy and conflicts. 3. Domestic issues and the economy. And 4. Political rivals and the media.
All right, Section 1, Space and the Unknown, touching on NASA, Artemis, and, yep, UFOs.
We start off, quite literally, in the stratosphere. Trump opened the gaggle standing alongside visiting NASA astronauts, and he immediately heaped praise on the NASA team and his appointee, Jared. He claimed that under his watch, space facilities went from basically having weeds growing in the cracks of the runways to being totally revitalized. He kept bringing up the unbelievable courage of these astronauts, saying it's exactly that kind of bravery that makes the country great.
Now, what's really interesting here is the specific timeline he laid out for returning to the moon. We've got Artemis 2 orbiting the moon, followed by Artemis 3 launching in 2027, and then setting up two opportunities for a surface return by 2028. And right in the same breath, he made a point to emphasize the Space Force. He noted it faced a lot of initial opposition, but argued it's now absolutely vital for both modern military offense and defense.
But then, a reporter asked a question, and the whole conversation took a sudden, massive turn toward the extraterrestrial. What about the UFO files?
Yeah, UFOs. He actually promised to release as much UFO-related material as possible in the near future. And his justification? He cited private conversations he had back in his first term with military pilots. He called these pilots very solid people and said they reported seeing things that, quote, you wouldn't believe.
Moving on to Section 2, Foreign Policy and Conflicts, where we look at his assessments of Ukraine, Iran, and our allies.
The transcript shows a really sharp contrast in how he handles different geopolitical crises. Take Ukraine and Iran, for example. With Ukraine, he talked about a recent phone call with Vladimir Putin where he urged him to find a solution and even suggested a ceasefire. But with Iran, total opposite. He outlined a strategy of severe pressure, insisting on a 100% foolproof blockade to keep them from getting a nuclear weapon. He even threw in that he much prefers handling these negotiations over the phone rather than taking, 18-hour flights just to get handed a piece of paper he doesn't even like.
Now, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, his assessment is drastically different from what we usually see in the media. He painted a picture of a completely defeated Ukrainian military. We're talking claims of 159 Navy ships underwater, a decimated Air Force, 82% of their missiles just gone, and an economy that's totally crashing. He directly called out outlets like CNN and the New York Times, claiming they are falsely reporting that Ukraine is doing wonderfully. He also added that U.S. technology, specifically lasers and special machine guns, is now cheaply knocking out those expensive enemy drones. And he described Iran's military capabilities in almost the exact same way, completely neutralized. According to him, their Navy and Air Force are essentially wiped out, their radar systems are gone, and a staggering 80% of their missile-making facilities have been knocked out. He called his blockade strategy genius, said the Iranian economy is dead, and claimed that Iran basically just has to cry uncle at this point.
Shifting to our international allies, he had some high praise for King Charles III, following his recent speech to Congress, calling him a great king and a great friend. But it wasn't all positive. He made it very clear he was disappointed with NATO and European allies, saying they just hadn't provided the help he asked for with Ukraine and Iran. In his words, when the U.S. called for a hand, they simply weren't there.
All right, Section 3, Domestic Issues and the Economy. This covers legislation, the courts, and economic growth.
The conversation bounced back home real fast. What's crucial to notice here is how he weaves these completely different domestic threads together. A reporter asks about legislative standoffs over the Farm Bill, and boom, he immediately pivots to border security, claiming Democrats have let in 25 million people, including over 11,000 murderers. In the same stretch, he casually mentions he's very pleased with the Supreme Court ruling that narrowed the Voting Rights Act, calling it the kind of ruling he likes. Oh, and he praised the UAE for pulling out of OPEC, which he says will help drive down our domestic gas prices.
When talking about the economy, he really painted a picture of absolute boom times. He mentioned nominating Kevin Warsh to the Fed specifically to lower interest rates. He claimed that thanks to his tariff policies, auto plants are fleeing places like Canada, Mexico, and Germany to come right back here. Plus, he talked about unprecedented tens of billions being dumped into AI and said companies are now literally bypassing the old traditional electrical grid to build their own massive, independent power plants.
Which brings us to our final section, number 4, political rivals in media. We're looking at James Comey, the courts, and fake news.
Things got highly personal toward the end of the gaggle. A reporter brought up former FBI Director James Comey's recent court surrender. This was all tied to a social media post Comey made that featured some seashells and a very specific number, 8647.
Now, Trump didn't see this as just some random string of numbers. According to the transcript, he interpreted the 86 as a literal death threat against him. He leaned right into mafia movie tropes, explaining that 86 is a mob term used by gangsters that basically means kill them or make someone disappear.
He definitely used this moment to double down on his long-standing grievances. He flat out called the former FBI director a dirty cop who cheated on the elections to help Hillary Clinton and framed him as someone who's incredibly corrupt and dangerous to politicians.
And throughout this entire gaggle, he was actively sparring with the press in the room. He completely dismissed any reporting that contradicted his views on Ukraine or domestic issues, brushing off outlets like CNN and the New York Times as fake news. He attributed their coverage to what he likes to call Trump derangement syndrome.
So, stepping back from all the specific numbers and claims, what is the big takeaway here? Well, the main narrative thread tying all this together, from the moon missions to foreign blockades to the media, is a projection of absolute American dominance under his leadership. He repeatedly framed the U.S. as the hottest country anywhere in the world. He credits all of this strength entirely to his own policies, while simultaneously painting his political opponents, the media, and our global adversaries as totally defeated or fundamentally corrupt.
Which leaves us with his final thought to chew on. When the script is completely thrown out, what does its rapid-fire, unfiltered flow of ideas actually tell us about the person standing behind the podium? How do totally unscripted interactions like this shape our real understanding of a political figure's priorities and their rhetorical style? It is definitely a fascinating lens for viewing political communication. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking those big questions.